What if the universe is not broken, not incomplete, not waiting for better telescopes or smarter equations? What if the hiding is intentional? What if the concealment is not a gap in human knowledge, but a built-in feature of the system itself, scaled perfectly from the smallest particle ever measured all the way to the largest structures human instruments have ever detected? And what if you, the person watching this right now, are not outside that concealment looking in, but are woven into it so completely that the act of searching is itself part of what keeps the hidden layer hidden? That is not a philosophical question. That is what the experimental data actually shows. And by the end of this, the word hidden will never mean the same thing to you again. Here is what physicists have known for decades but rarely say plainly. The universe does not reveal itself uniformly. It conceals itself systematically. The hiding is layered. It scales from quantum particles all the way to cosmic structure. And sitting precisely between those two scales is you. That is not a metaphor. Stay with me. Because there are three distinct and independently verified layers of concealment in this universe, and when you place them alongside one another, a pattern emerges that no honest mind can dismiss as coincidence. Look at your hand right now, not as a rhetorical gesture. Actually, look. You are observing approximately 37 trillion cells, each one executing thousands of chemical operations every second, coordinated in ways that no engineer has ever fully reverse engineered. You assembled that entire biological architecture without thinking once about how to do it. Your body built itself from instructions written in a language that predates human civilization by 4 billion years. You did not choose your bone density. You did not design your immune response. You did not wire the visual cortex currently processing the light reflecting off this screen. All of it happened. All of it was concealed from you while it happened. The question that no biology class ever asks directly is this: why is the deepest machinery of your own existence hidden from your own awareness? Why does the universe grant you access to the surface of things, but never the source? That question turns out not to be philosophical. It turns out to be experimental, and the experiments do not have comfortable answers. In 2015, a research team at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands conducted what became known as the loophole-free Bell test. They were attempting to settle a debate that had been open since 1935, a debate that Albert Einstein himself launched when he dismissed quantum entanglement as spooky action at a distance and dedicated the remainder of his career to proving it was simply a sign of incomplete theory. The experiment was designed to test what physicists call local hidden variable theory. Behind that technical phrase is an assumption so ancient and intuitive that most people have never consciously questioned it. It says that things have properties that exist regardless of whether anyone is measuring them. The moon is there when no one looks at it. The electron has a definite spin before any instrument detects it. Reality is real on its own terms, independent of observation. Einstein held this position. Every human being who has ever lived holds this position instinctively. It is one of the most deeply embedded assumptions in the human mind. The Delft team expected to confirm it. They had superior instruments. They had closed the technical loopholes that had allowed previous experiments to be questioned. They had done everything correctly. And what they found was that local hidden variable theory is not probably wrong, not questionable, not in need of revision. It is experimentally, statistically, rigorously false. Two particles separated by 1.3 kilometers were correlating their states faster than light could have transmitted any signal between them, not approximately faster, instantaneously, as though the physical distance separating them was not a feature of underlying reality, but merely a feature of the interface through which we observe reality. Einstein's foundational assumption, the one shared by every human being across all of recorded history, was wrong. And what replaced it was not a cleaner answer. What replaced it was a confirmed and deepened mystery. The universe does not contain hidden properties that exist prior to measurement. It behaves as though properties are generated at the precise moment of observation. Let that genuinely settle. Not as a fact about subatomic particles, as a fact about the nature of existence itself. There is a peer-reviewed, experimentally verified sense in which reality is not fully present until something looks at it. Now, step back from the particle scale. Rise to the level of the cosmos, because the concealment does not stop at quantum mechanics. It scales upward. In 1998, two independent research teams, the High-Z Supernova Search Team and the Supernova Cosmology Project, were independently measuring the rate at which the universe is expanding. Their theoretical model was clear: expansion should be decelerating. Gravity operates across all distances. The combined mass of everything in the universe should be pulling all of it gradually back toward itself, slowing the outward momentum from the Big Bang the way a ball thrown upward slows before reversing direction. Both teams expected to measure a deceleration rate. Both teams, operating with different instruments and different data sets, arrived at the same result, and that result was impossible under every existing model. The universe is not decelerating, it is accelerating. Something is actively driving the fabric of space apart at an increasing rate, and that something is completely invisible. It does not interact with light. It produces no electromagnetic signal of any kind. It cannot be directly detected by any instrument that has ever been constructed. Physicists gave it a name, dark energy, because the alternative was admitting they had no name for something that constitutes the dominant force shaping the cosmos. The current best estimate places dark energy at approximately 68% of everything that exists. Dark matter, similarly undetectable, accounts for another 27%. The atoms, the stars, the galaxies, the planets, the biology, every structure that has ever been measured, touched, or observed by any human instrument across all of scientific history, all of it combined represents roughly 5% of the universe. 95% is hidden. Not hidden somewhere waiting to be found with sufficiently advanced technology. Hidden in a manner that appears to be structurally encoded into what existence is. The universe is not mostly visible. It is mostly concealed, and the concealment is not a deficiency in our instruments. It appears to be a property of the architecture. And here is precisely where the hiding stops being a fact about physics and becomes a fact about you personally. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of information per second from your sensory systems. The number of bits your conscious mind actually processes is, depending on which study you consult, somewhere between 40 and 50. You are consciously experiencing approximately 40 bits of an 11 million bit data stream. The remaining 10,999,960 bits are filtered, compressed, predicted, and eliminated before they ever reach your awareness. You are not perceiving reality. You are perceiving a heavily edited reconstruction of reality, generated by a system you did not design, operating on rules you did not write, making filtering decisions you are never consulted about. Neuroscientist Anil Seth at the University of Sussex describes conscious perception as a controlled hallucination. His research has demonstrated that what you experience as seeing is primarily a predictive model generated by your brain, a best guess reconstruction that is then compared against incoming sensory signals, with only the discrepancies between prediction and input reaching conscious attention. You do not see what is present. You see what your brain predicted would be present, updated by a thin stream of error correction data. The world you experience is a model, and the modeling process is completely hidden from the person doing the experiencing. 3 separate and independently verified layers of concealment now sit in front of us. At the quantum scale, reality withholds definite properties until the moment of observation. At the cosmic scale, 95% of what exists remains undetectable by any means available. At the perceptual scale, your brain withholds the vast majority of its own processing from your conscious awareness, delivering a curated reconstruction rather than direct access to what is actually there. The same word appears at every level, hidden. This is not 3 separate mysteries happening to share similar language. This is one consistent pattern expressing itself at every scale of the universe simultaneously. In 1994, mathematician and computer scientist Jürgen Schmidhuber published a formal argument that a universe like ours, one that follows computable mathematical laws and in which the complexity of what can be observed is bounded, is precisely what you would expect to find if the universe were a computational process, not a metaphor for computation, an actual computational process. His work is not fringe speculation. It appeared in peer-reviewed publications and has been cited by physicists, including Max Tegmark at MIT, whose mathematical universe hypothesis proposes something more radical still, that physical reality is not described by mathematics, it is mathematics. The equations are not a map of the territory. The equations are the territory. If that position is even partially correct, then the layered concealment makes complete logical sense. In any information processing system, there are things the system can represent and things it cannot. There are access levels, there are layers of the underlying process that the process itself cannot observe without corrupting the observation through the act of observing it. The universe may be hiding itself not because it is protecting a secret, but because genuine self-observation at complete resolution is computationally impossible. You cannot run a complete simulation and simultaneously be inside the simulation and observe the simulation at its own foundational level without something in the structure collapsing. And what collapses consistently, measurably, and experimentally is the hidden layer. It becomes the observed layer. The act of looking changes what exists to be seen. John Wheeler spent 50 years at Princeton and the University of Texas as one of the most rigorous and respected physicists of his generation, the man who named the black hole and developed nuclear theory alongside Niels Bohr. Late in his career, he arrived at a position his colleagues found genuinely uncomfortable. He called it the participatory universe, not the observed universe, the participatory one. His position, grounded in decades of working directly with quantum mechanics, was that the universe does not persist in a definite state independently of observation. It requires observers to bring specific states into being, not metaphorically, but physically. His delayed choice experiments, later confirmed under laboratory conditions by a team at the Australian National University in 2015, demonstrated something that should have permanently altered the way everyone thinks about time and causality. You can construct an experimental arrangement in which the choice of how to observe a particle, made after the particle has already been detected, retroactively determines what that particle was doing before it was detected. The observation reaches backward through time and changes not the record of the past, but the past itself. Wheeler's conclusion from this was not mystical, it was logical. If observation shapes reality at the quantum level, and quantum mechanics is the most accurate and fundamental description of physical reality ever produced, then reality is not a fixed stage upon which observers move. Reality is a process in which observers are active participants. The concealment is not passive, it is structural. The universe hides until it is observed, and what it reveals depends entirely on the manner in which it is asked to reveal itself. Now apply that directly to your own life, not as inspiration and not as comfort, but as physics. Every assessment you have ever made of your own reality passed through the filter of an observer that is itself part of the system being observed. Every conclusion you have drawn about what is real, what is possible, what exists, was drawn through an instrument, your perception, your cognition, your consciousness, that has been experimentally demonstrated to hide the majority of its own processing from you. You are not a neutral observer of your reality. You are an entangled participant in a system that structurally conceals its own foundations from its own components. There is a physicist named David Bohm who worked with Einstein and Oppenheimer and spent the later portion of his career developing what he called the implicate order. The argument is this: what we can measure and observe, the particles, the fields, the forces, the visible structures of the cosmos, is what he called the explicate order, the unfolded version of something deeper. Beneath it, inaccessible to direct measurement, is a more fundamental level of organization from which the explicate order continuously unfolds, the way a wave breaks on a shore. The wave is visible. The ocean depth from which it emerges is not. Bohm was not engaged in speculation. His work on quantum potential is treated seriously in the foundations of physics community. And what it describes is a universe with a readable surface and an unreadable interior, not because the interior is absent, but because it operates at a different level of organization than anything our instruments were constructed to detect. The universe is not only hiding its contents, it may be hiding its own structure, the rules by which the rules are made, the generative layer beneath the observable layer. And this is the realization that standard physics education never quite reaches. Because when you gather all of these threads together, a comprehensive picture forms. The universe conceals its components at the quantum scale, it conceals its composition at the cosmic scale, it conceals its processing at the neurological scale, and beneath all three of those layers, if Bohm and Wheeler and Tegmark are even partially correct, it conceals its own generative architecture. The level at which whatever is running this system actually runs. You are a conscious system, aware enough to recognize that you are embedded in something you cannot fully access, assembled from materials you cannot directly examine, operating on rules that resist direct observation. Inside a cosmos whose majority content is permanently invisible, asking questions about a reality that appears to require your asking in order to determine what it is. If that pattern resembles a designed concealment, it is because the structure is consistent across every scale at which it has been examined. Whether the organizing principle is a physics, a process, a computation, or something that currently has no name, the architecture is the same everywhere. There is a visible layer. There is a hidden layer. The visible layer is what we experience. The hidden layer is what generates the experience. And the distance between what you can see and what is actually present is not a temporary ignorance waiting to be closed by more advanced instruments. It is, the evidence suggests, a permanent structural feature of the kind of universe we inhabit. Here is the question that deserves to keep you awake. Not what is the universe hiding, but from whom? Because if the universe conceals its quantum states from measurement instruments, and conceals its dark content from detectors, and conceals its processing from conscious minds, and all of those are the same universe operating at different scales, then the hiding is not directed at any particular level of observation. It is directed at observation itself. The universe conceals itself from the act of looking, which means the concealment is not fundamentally about what is being hidden, it is about what looking is. What observation is, what it means at the deepest physical level for something to be seen. That question, what does it mean for something to exist in the moment of being observed, is the question that quantum mechanics opened in 1927 and that 100 years of physics has not resolved. It has only deepened. You entered this conversation carrying an assumption so embedded you have probably never consciously examined it. The assumption that the universe exists and that you observe it from a position outside it. What the evidence suggests is that the relationship is not that straightforward. You are not standing outside the system looking in. You are inside the system, built from the system's own materials, looking at a version of the system that the system generates specifically for entities like you. The hiding is not something that happens to you. The hiding is something you are part of, and understanding that, genuinely understanding it, not as a poetic image, but as the logical implication of peer-reviewed experimental physics, changes the scope of every question about what is real and what is possible. Consider what it means for a boundary to exist. A wall implies something on the other side. A locked door implies a room. Every edge in physics, every horizon, every limit, every location where our instruments return silence is not an ending. It is a surface. And surfaces face two directions. On one side, us, our instruments, our measurements, our 5%. On the other side, whatever is generating the boundary itself. Physicist Juan Maldacena at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton has spent decades developing what is called the AD-CFT correspondence, a mathematical framework demonstrating a precise equivalence between a theory of gravity operating in a three-dimensional volume and a quantum field theory encoded on the two-dimensional boundary surrounding that volume. In plain language, everything occurring inside a region of space can be completely and exactly described by information encoded on the surface surrounding that region. The inside and the boundary are not two different descriptions of the same reality. They are the same reality expressed in two different mathematical languages. The universe may not be hiding behind its boundaries. The universe may be its boundaries. The depth you are attempting to see into may be a projection of the surface you are standing on. You are not being excluded from a room. You are living on the exterior of a structure that contains itself. Gerard Hooft, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, arrived at an equivalent conclusion through independent work. Leonard Susskind formalized the framework. What they collectively gave physics is the holographic principle. The idea that the information content of any region of space is proportional not to its volume but to its surface area. That three-dimensional reality, in the most rigorous mathematical sense, is encoded on a two-dimensional boundary the way a hologram encodes a three-dimensional image on a flat surface. You may not be inside a three-dimensional universe that has a surface. You may be a projection of a two-dimensional surface that generates the experience of three dimensions. The depth is the constructed appearance. The surface is the underlying reality. And the concealment becomes completely coherent under this framework because a projection cannot examine the screen it is projected from. The image cannot investigate the light source. The observer cannot step outside the boundary that constitutes the observer. What this means is not merely that the universe hides things from you. It means that the category of you, the entity doing the observing, the awareness currently processing these words, is itself encoded into that surface. You are not the investigator standing outside the mystery. You are written into the mystery. Your curiosity about what is hidden is a feature of the hidden system expressing itself through one of its own components. The universe is not hiding from you. In a mathematically grounded, peer-reviewed, experimentally supported sense, the universe is hiding through you, using you as a surface through which the concealment is actively maintained. You are not failing to perceive the complete picture because you are not looking carefully enough. You cannot perceive the complete picture because you are part of the picture. And the specific portion of the picture that you constitute does not have access to the canvas it is painted on. This is why the most important question is not what the universe is hiding. The most important question is what it would even mean to see it fully. What kind of observer would need to exist to observe a system from a position genuinely outside that system? And is such an observer possible within the laws governing the system being observed? Because if the answer is no, if no observer inside the universe can ever achieve a perspective outside the universe, then the hiding is not a secret waiting patiently to be uncovered by sufficiently intelligent beings. It is a structural necessity. The universe conceals itself from observation in the same way your eye cannot see itself seeing, in the same way a thought cannot think about itself without becoming a different thought in the process. The concealment is not the obstacle standing between us and understanding. The concealment is what makes the system coherent. Remove the boundary and the projection has nothing to project onto. Remove the hidden layer and the visible layer has nothing to be visible against. The hiding is not the problem to be solved. The hiding is the architecture that allows everything else to function. That is a category of knowledge that physics rarely delivers. It is not the knowledge of what exists in the territory. It is the knowledge of why there is a territory at all. Why something exists rather than nothing. Why the something that exists is structured to be mostly invisible to the entities it produces. Why those entities, you specifically, are built to ask precisely the questions that cannot be fully answered from inside the system generating the questions. You are the universe's mechanism for concealing itself from itself while appearing to search. And somewhere in the gap between what you can perceive and what is actually present, in that 5% slice of a 95% hidden cosmos, on the projected surface of a holographic boundary, inside a brain filtering 11 million bits of reality down to 40, observing a quantum system that refuses to commit to definite states until forced to by the act of measurement. Somewhere in all of that, the thing that is hiding is watching you search for it. Whether that recognition makes you feel insignificant or makes you feel like the most extraordinary phenomenon in the known universe, probably reveals more about the nature of consciousness than any experiment yet designed. Because here is what follows immediately from everything established in this conversation. If the universe actively conceals its own structure from observers, and if observation is precisely what brings quantum states into definite existence, then there is a question that physics has not agreed on how to answer despite 100 years of attempting to do so. What is an observer? Not in the casual everyday sense. In the rigorous, formal, physical sense, what constitutes an observation? Does a camera observe? Does an uninhabited rock observe? Does the universe observe itself? And if consciousness is not incidental to the structure of physical reality, but is somehow fundamental to it, then what you are is not a minor biological accident on an average planet orbiting an unremarkable star. What you are is something the universe requires in order to become definite, something the hidden system uses to render itself real. That question leads somewhere that needs its own dedicated exploration, a direct examination of the measurement problem and what 100 years of disagreement among the most capable minds in physics implies about the nature of mind itself.